with it the way those dead people do? Come on! What you're feeling is premature enlightenment.
How does consumer culture drive existential dissatisfaction? How does dissatisfaction with oneself lead to external violence? And how does that violence lead back to satisfaction within oneself? My name is Adam, and today I'll be discussing Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club, where I will explore a powerful concept at the heart of this cult classic: existential violence. In a world that feels hollow and dictated by consumerism, the characters of Fight Club grapple with a relentless search for meaning, fueled by an intense frustration that leads them down a path of rebellion, self-destruction, and self-revelation. But what exactly is existential aggression, and why does it resonate so strongly with the story? In this video, we'll examine how Fight Club uses raw violence not just as a reaction to societal emptiness, but as a desperate attempt to reclaim identity, purpose, and freedom in a world that often leaves us feeling numb. Alongside this analysis, I'll also be looking at some of the conventions of existential literature and using them to help the argument. In essence, existential violence is a loose and unofficial term that captures the frustration, anger, and aggression that arise when individuals confront feelings of meaninglessness, alienation, or powerlessness in their lives. Rooted in existential philosophy, it's a reaction to the struggle for identity, purpose, and autonomy in a world that often feels constraining or indifferent. In Fight Club, for example, the characters channel their existential anger into rebellion against society, consumerism, and the constraints of modern life, as summarized by Project Mayhem. One of the first and primary elements of existential literature is that the character possesses a fractured relationship with themselves. This can already be pre-established, or an event can occur that causes them to go into this state of dissonance. In The Sickness Unto Death by Soren Kierkegaard, he discusses how the feeling or state of despair is caused by not knowing and or relating to oneself. The self which, in his despair, he wants to be is a self he is not. To want to be the self he truly is the opposite of despair, but he wants to tear his self away from the power that established it. This estrangement leads to a sense of isolation from the external world due to poor social connections, anxiety, or existential angst, where the world and its existence lack rational purpose. The character's encounter with nothingness results in a feeling of indifference, emotional numbness, or panic. This baseline scenario explores the struggle of being alive in the face of death, as per Heidegger's concept of being in time. The kind of movement of plunging into and within the groundlessness of inauthentic being, in that they constantly tear understanding away from projecting authentic possibilities, and into the tranquilized supposition of possessing or attaining everything. In other words, inauthentic living, or living according to other people's definition of yourself, prevents one from authentic living and being a free individual. The character delves into the existential dilemma of identifying oneself within the context of mortality, rejecting clear missions or moral imperatives typically found in action and adventure narratives. In Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club, the narrator, Tyler Durden, heavily suffers from insomnia and is depressed at his job. Tyler expresses that he feels that everything is so far away, a copy of a copy of a copy. In order to feel cathartic releases of emotion, Tyler attends various support group meetings to experience other people's pain firsthand. When Tyler meets Marla, a girl who also attends support groups in order to garner an emotional payoff, he experiences an existential dissociation. Well, Marla is smoking and rolling her eyes, and me, I'm buried under a sobbing carpet, and all of a sudden, even death and dying rank right down there with plastic flowers on video as a non-event. Tyler's relationship with Marla allows him to sign death as an insignificant factor in his life. His orientation towards life is thus further twisted in combination with his feelings of isolation induced by his insomnia. Thus, Tyler exists inauthentically both to himself and to Marla. As a result of this encounter with internal and external existential discordance, or a sense of nothingness, existentialism implies the character will face morally ambiguous and absurd scenarios. Since existentialism prioritizes individual choice over social structures such as religion or cultural norms, characters often cannot find reliable social references to navigate obstacles. Albert Camus calls this abandonment of orientation the absurd. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. This must not be forgotten. This must be clung to because the whole consequence of a life can depend on it. The absurd encapsulates the irrational, which is necessary to contrast the rational orientation of an inauthentic existence. Similarly, Jean-Paul Sartre writes, "Thus, man's existence is absurd because his contingency finds no external justification." In other words, for the characters to exist and act authentically, they experience an abandonment of imposed structures that dictate thoughts or beliefs that are not their own. the characters commit versions of what Camus calls philosophical suicide. In Fight Club, Tyler begins the book by pondering the senselessness of existence. He says, "It's so quiet this high up. The feeling you get is that you're one of those space monkeys. You do the little job you're trained to do. Pull a lever, push a button. You don't understand any of it, and then you just die." Although the beginning of the plot starts where the narrative ends, the reader garners an understanding of Tyler's internal philosophy. Because Tyler sees his existence as irrational, anything he does to interpret or combat its absurdity cannot be rational. Tyler's act of attending support group meetings to garner authentic emotions is outside of any social convention but his own. Tyler's irrational decision allows him to feel rationally authentic with himself. This was freedom. Losing all hope was freedom. If I didn't say anything, people in a group assumed the worst. They cried harder. I cried harder. Look up into the stars and you're gone. Tyler's abandonment of hope in acquiring a freedom is accompanied by his exploitation of others' suffering. Although he participates in a communal expression of emotions, Tyler is driven by his independent motivation. Consequently, his active irrational emotional exploitation mirrors his philosophy that life is senseless. Simultaneously, existentialism also strongly emphasizes a character's subjective experience and personal responsibility in shaping their own existence. Kierkegaard writes, "Thus, when the ambitious man, whose slogan was either Caesar or nothing, does not become Caesar, he is in despair over it. But this signifies something else, namely, that precisely because he did not become Caesar, he now cannot bear to be himself. Consequently, he is not in despair over the fact that he did not become Caesar, but he is in despair over himself, for the fact that he did not become Caesar." After the character has accepted irrational reasoning as rational, the absurd, they take sole responsibility for shaping their existence. This step differs from step 2 in that it focuses less on abandoning rational orientation and more on what the characters do once they act with this subjective agency. In Kierkegaard's case, this is the abandonment of becoming Caesar, a social model to embrace and resist the existential despair of not becoming Caesar. Another way to categorize this step is through Jean-Paul Sartre's idea that existence precedes essence. Sartre argues that man is not only that which he conceives himself to be, but that which he wills himself to be. And since he conceives of himself only after he exists, man is nothing more than what he makes of himself. Tyler Durden acts in accordance with his irrational feelings to will his own being into existence. In Fight Club, Tyler takes action and creates his alter ego by the same name, Tyler Durden, as well as Fight Club, a secret organization in which participants brutalize each other in order to assert individual strength in the day-to-day world. After Tyler's alter ego, Tyler, begins Fight Club, his view on the world and his place in it changes. Who guys are in Fight Club is not who they are in the real world. Even if you told the kid at the copy center that he had a good fight, you wouldn't be talking to the same man. Tyler's irrational actions of fighting other men in secret structure his external and performatively rational life. Tyler states, "Most guys are at Fight Club because of something they're scared to fight. After a few fights, you're afraid a lot less." Fight Club thus becomes Tyler's physical manifestation of irrationality, and it is utilized to justify his existence as an individual. Existentialism widens the scope of the individual's personal responsibility, as it deals with how characters seek to relate their being to the external world. In Existentialism as a Humanism, Jean-Paul Sartre expands the scope of responsibility and argues that beyond the individual, each man is responsible for all men and how he chooses to participate in other people's lives. In literature, characters are often tasked with discovering how they should reassert their relationship to the world from which they are alienated. Although a full reconnection with the external world may not occur, this step's essence lies in moving from self-understanding to social truths and impacts. In Palahniuk's book, as the Fight Club gains popularity nationwide, Tyler exploits its members to disseminate anti-consumerist beliefs, orchestrating elaborate pranks targeting corporate America. Eventually, he assembles the most dedicated members of Fight Club to establish Project Mayhem, an organization that trains itself as an army with the objective being the complete and right-away destruction of civilization. The ultimate goal of the organization is to blow up all of the credit card buildings, so everyone's credit would be set back to zero, thus making everyone capitalistically equal. In the process of making his plans a reality, Tyler destroys everything in his life. The world is going crazy. My boss is dead, my home is gone, my job is gone, and I'm responsible for it all. There's nothing left. Tyler's radical acceptance motivates him to take back complete control of his psyche, which leads him to shoot himself in the head in order to destroy his alter ego. Thus, for Tyler, Project Mayhem is how he asserts his irrational being into the world. By the end of the book, readers are invited into a profound contemplation of human existence. As they journey through the narrative, encountering the intricacies of Tyler's lives and the unfolding events, they are prompted to pause and reflect. This reflective lens, imbued with existential inquiry, encourages readers to delve deeper into the thematic currents coursing through the narrative. Themes such as religion, authenticity, responsibility, and individuality emerge as focal points for contemplation, their significance magnified with existential tradition. By engaging with these themes, readers are afforded an opportunity not only to explore the characters' inner landscapes, but also to interrogate fundamental aspects of their own existence. This process of introspection transcends the boundaries of the narrative, extending into the realm of personal philosophy and existential understanding. Thus, existentialism becomes a gateway to a broader exploration of the human condition, inviting readers to navigate the network of existential questions and emerge with a deeper understanding of themselves and the world through a type of physical and mental violence Chuck Palahniuk offers in one of the most important novels today, Fight Club.